All right, hi guys. This is your prep video for chapters 15 through 18. Very similar setup. You'll have your 2.5 hours. Same type of setup where once you pass a question, you can't go back. You have to do it all in one sitting. I think there's 25 questions total. And so your first three are going to be the same. You're going to have a chapter 15 matching vocab, chapter 16 matching vocab, and chapter 17 matching vocab. Chapter 18 you won't have a matching vocab because there's only 2 vocab words. So after your first 3, you will have a new matching from chapter 15, which is just about the drugs. So being able to determine which drugs match the description given. So after you get all your matching done, then going back into chapter 15, you're going to need to be able to discuss the characteristics of addiction. There's very specific ones given according to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, so make sure you're aware of those. You also are going to talk a little bit about gambling, so you want to know what are some of the actual checklists for the DSM. So those are provided in your book. What are the actual symptoms according to the DSM of gambling disorder? And then what are some of the risk factors for people who have problem gambling? You're going to want to talk in general about the drug use on campus. So there's some statistics given from Monitoring the Future study. There's quite a few of those given. And then also be able to talk about why students don't use drugs and why students do use drugs. And there's some different kind of components there that you'll have to be able to explain. Let's see. Discussing your routes of administration. So what's the difference between intramuscular and intravenous, and why do some people choose certain methods over others? And good examples of that would be how fast does it act in the body, how long does it stay in the body, things like that. And then you're going to just have to pick some drugs and describe them in the most detail that you can. So just going through, you have caffeine, you have over-the-counter drugs, prescription drugs, you have, let's see, what else did I pick? Cannabinoids, you have herbal drugs, synthetic designer drugs, and then you get into some of the more specific, you have club drugs, and then more specifically, cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamine. I tried to list as many as I could. Heroin, fentanyl, PCP, ketamine, inhalants. So you're going to have a whole bunch, and you're just going to have to pick some of those and give as much detail as you can. Obviously, always pay attention to how many points the question is worth. The more points that the question is worth, the more information that I'm expecting you to give me about those topics. So make sure that you're including a variety. There's tons of information in your book about those different drugs. Let's see. And I think that might be it in that chapter. Let me just confirm. Yeah, I think that's really it that you have to discuss in that chapter. Going into the alcohol section, one of the first things you're going to have to do is talk about just some of the statistics on drinking in America. They give them to you from the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. And then again, a little bit about drinking on campus. So what are some actual reasons that this is a big health concern? Again, there's a whole bunch listed, but just be able to talk about a few of those. Binge drinking is going to be another key component that you're going to want to talk about. Who tends to binge drink and why students binge drink. So those would be two big components you could look at. Let's see. We're going to look at the alcohol, the impact of alcohol on the body. And again, there's different categories: digestive system, weight and waste, cancer, etc. So be able to discuss a few of those. You don't have to know every single category, but be able to talk about a couple of those categories in detail in regards to the actual impact on the body. Know something about alcohol and gender. Know something about alcohol and race. And they give you a bunch of different examples of race. So they give you Native American, they give you Asian. But just knowing at least something about one of those statistics related to race. Okay, I think that's that in that chapter. Going into tobacco, again, knowing what are some of the statistics on actual tobacco use in America, which is right in the beginning. They give you a bunch of statistics. Knowing some statistics specifically about tobacco use on campus. And then again, knowing something about smoking related to gender and knowing something about smoking related to race. You want to know some actual health effects of smoking, just like we did with alcohol. So again, there's some different components. There's health effects on students, there's premature death, heart disease and stroke, etc. So being able to talk about a couple of those major issues. I'm going to have you pick either electronic cigarettes or hookahs and just give me as much information about that as you can. And then in the last section really is just kind of overall general personal safety. So one of the things you're going to talk about is why accidents happen. And then you're going to pick one of the big categories. So like safety on the road is a big category. Safety at work and home is a big category. Which gender is at risk is a big category. Violence in America. And you're just going to give me a bunch of detail about that. Again, those are going to be worth more points, so make sure you're being very detailed because I'm letting you just pick a big section. But then when you get to sexual victimization and violence, that's going to be a whole separate question. So within sexual victimization and violence, you're going to have to pick a couple of the topics and talk about those. So examples would be like cyberbullying and sexting or sexual harassment. But there's a bunch of kind of subtitles in there that you can discuss as well. And then I think really the last question is just going to relate to chapters 15 through 17 because you have all of the different substances combined in those and discussing a little bit about how do we prevent the substance use issues, how do we treat them. So, treatment for something like heroin is going to be very different than treatment for alcohol use. And so just discussing some of that, the prevention strategies and the treatment strategies and what seems to work, what doesn't seem to work. So really that should give you kind of a good breakdown of what to focus on. The test, like I said, 25 questions, very similar. Your first three are matching vocab. Your fourth is a matching just on the drugs. And then everything after that, you have, I think, one fill-in and one true or false. And then everything is just addressing those things that I just told you about. And same time frame, 2.5 hours, all in one sitting. You won't be able to go back to questions once you've answered them. It should all be coming out of your textbook, so no copying, pasting from the internet. And this is your last test, so hopefully you will do really well. And then we'll be wrapping it up. So good luck.